The air is not just hot, it is toxic. The temperature is 1,200 degrees. Stone is exploding like grenades. The lead roof of massive St. Paul's Cathedral is melting, flowing down the streets like a river of silver lava. This isn't hell. This is London. September 1666. 4 days that deleted a medieval city. But to understand how an empire rose from these ashes, we have to go back to the single spark that started it all. To understand the resurrection, you have to smell the corpse. And in 1665, London was rotting. This was not the majestic city of stone we know today. This was a death trap, a labyrinth of timber, pitch, and straw. Houses were built so close together that you could shake hands with your neighbor across the street. It blocked out the sun, it trapped the air, and it trapped the disease. Just 1 year before the fire, the Great Plague had killed nearly a quarter of the population, 100,000 dead. The streets were open sewers. The alleyways were choked with filth. London was a ticking time bomb of biology and physics, dry timber, strong winds, and a city exhausted by death. God didn't send the fire to destroy London. The city was built to burn. It was waiting for the spark. September 2nd, Pudding Lane. A baker's oven is left unmonitored. A spark jumps. The mayor is woken up, looks at the flames and famously says, "Pish, a woman might piss it out." He goes back to sleep. He was wrong. The fire moves faster than a man can run. It creates its own weather system. The River Thames becomes a highway of refugees, boats overloaded with chests, children, and musical instruments. But as the fire spread, something darker began to happen. Fire wasn't the only danger. Paranoia spread faster than the flames. London was at war with the Dutch and the French. The terrified citizens didn't believe this was an accident. They believed it was an attack. Mob rule took over the streets. Any foreigner found in the city was hunted down. A blacksmith walked up to a Frenchman and struck him over the head with an iron bar, killing him instantly. Another woman was attacked because she carried chickens in her apron. The mob screamed they were fireballs. While the city burned, Londoners turned on each other. It was anarchy. Even the rich were not spared. Samuel Pepys, the famous diarist, famously dug a hole in his garden to bury his most prized possessions, not his money, but his papers, his wine, and a giant wheel of Parmesan cheese. Priorities in the face of the apocalypse. But no cheese or wine could save the city from what came next. The fire reached the spiritual heart of England. Old St. Paul's Cathedral. The citizens ran to the stone walls for safety. They filled the cathedral with their books, cloth, and treasures, thinking God would protect them. But the cathedral was under renovation, covered in wooden scaffolding. The scaffold acted like a fuse. The roof caught fire. Witnesses described a horrific sight. The lead roof melted. A river of molten metal poured down the streets. The pavement glowed red hot. The books in the crypt fueled the flames for a week. The medieval city was erased. When the smoke finally cleared, the anger remained. Someone had to pay. The city needed a villain, and they found one. His name was Robert Hubert, a simple-minded French watchmaker. He was seized by a mob and dragged before the judges. Confused, terrified, and perhaps hoping for mercy, Hubert confessed. He claimed he started the fire by throwing a grenade through the bakery window. It was a lie. Evidence later proved Hubert wasn't even in London when the fire started. He was physically unable to commit the crime. But facts didn't matter. The city demanded blood. Hubert was hanged at Tyburn. His body was torn apart by the crowd. Only years later would the captain of the ship that brought him to England confirm Hubert arrived 2 days after the fire began. London didn't just lose its buildings. In its grief, it lost its soul. London was a black scar on the bank of the Thames. But while the people wept, a few men saw an opportunity. Enter the visionary Christopher Wren and the King, Charles II. They realized something profound. The fire had cauterized the wound. The plague rats, dead. The wooden slums, gone. The filth, purified by fire. The king issued a decree. No man shall build with wood. London would be rebuilt in brick and stone. From the ashes, a forest of church spires began to rise, and in the center, the new St. Paul's Cathedral, a dome to rival Rome itself. It took 35 years to build. When it was finished, it wasn't just a church, it was a statement. London was no longer a medieval town. It was the capital of a global superpower. Walk through the City of London today. Look closely at the monument to the Great Fire. It stands exactly 202 feet from where the bakery on Pudding Lane once stood. If you lay the monument flat, the tip touches the source of the fire. Without the fire, there is no British Empire as we know it. The fire forced modernization. It created the financial district. It created the skyline. History is often written in blood, but sometimes destruction is the only path to creation. London burned so it could live forever. This is the story of the resurrection.